This is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. It is January 8th. It's our very first day of the session. The committee assignments have just been made, so we have a brand new committee. And this is our first time meeting. So what I'd like to do is go around the table and sort of introduce ourselves and say what town we're from and maybe some of the interests you might have. And maybe a little bit of your background, but then we'll get into what the committee topics are and how we work for that. And also I do want to spend some time. It may not be today, it may be today. We'll just have to see how it goes. But there are some committee nuances and committee protocol that I want to go over with folks, and a committee protocol versus the House floor protocol and how they're kind of connected and what is not connected. And I'm going to look to our returning members here to also help. But as many of you may find out, I'm a stickler for, oh, good. I'm a stickler for protocol, and I am a stickler for decorum. And hi, Brian, that's going to be your chair.
That's my chair.
Yeah, I thought it'd be good for you right near the door.
You kicking me out already? I didn't do anything yet.
I just didn't want you to have to walk behind a lot of folks.
Thank you.
So I want to make sure it's easy access. So we are on YouTube
Okay.
for that, and we're going to go around the room and introduce ourselves. And I know, as I said earlier, many folks may not have even put this committee down on their list, and they're saying, what am I doing here? I don't know what I'm doing here. And if you really are struggling with that, go talk to Gina, because she'll tell you. Because last time when she came here, she was like, what am I doing here? So it's just good base. But anyway, I'm Alice Emmons. I am chair of this committee. I come from Springfield. I've been chair of the committee for quite a while. And I think this one, I'll just leave it at that. You'll get to know me. And I'm going to go to James. James is new to this committee. So welcome as our vice chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is James Gregoire. I represent Fairfield, Fletcher, and Bakersfield. I was on Human Services for the last 6 years, and actually I got a little text message from my former chair. I can't wait to see what that says. Like, we miss you. But on the topic, it's real funny that not wanting to be somewhere, my first year having a background in education, when I walked in and our former chair was like, hey, welcome. And I was like, I don't want to be here. And so to this day, they tell new members, James, by the way, he didn't want to be here. But I do want to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So
You'll learn a lot of things, I'll tell you.
Oh, really? It's great to see everybody. I'm Connor Casey. Welcome to my district. I think I have the shortest commute of anybody. It's a 1-minute drive, which will get me kicked out of the climate caucus probably, because I shouldn't be driving. So I'm a second term here, and yeah, I put it as the first choice chair. It's I really enjoyed I enjoyed the committee dynamics last year. You know, we can have a Royal Rumble steel cage match on the floor, but you know, we have a pint afterwards and everybody's friends, and you know, it was really good. So happy to be back. My background, union organizer for the most part. And I used to testify, started 20 years ago on this committee when I was working for the State Employees Association.
Kind of knew you.
She was still chair, but
Judy Alfetti, Washington Orange. As Alice had mentioned, my first go around, this was not even on my radar screen at all. I picked my job off the House floor when it was announced, but this time it was my first choice. And there's a lot of dynamic moving parts in this committee that I really appreciated. I have a contracting business, house painting contracting, and you know, there's a lot of different things that come through this committee. So it's fun. And as Connor mentioned, you know, to have a caucus of the pint from time to time. So it's good.
After session. Yeah, after session.
Sure.
Not
well, we wouldn't be doing it in the building.
no, not in the building, not during committee, not during session.
I'm Mary Morrissey from Bennington. I'm in my 15th term. And Alice, though, you should tell them your term.
I lost count. Somebody asked me how many terms.
22,
I think 22.
not in competition with you, for sure. I've been on the committee now for, is it 4 terms? This will be,
At least 4 or 5
I
terms.
think this is my 4th term. And
Been more.
a lot of interesting topics, things you would never think of that you will be talking about, but we will, and we'll get through it. The committee dynamics has always been interesting, and I always have appreciated everyone's viewpoint. So you'll get a lot out of it and make good friends. So I look forward to that happening. And I don't have a cold that I can give to anyone with COVID. I just have allergies, so forgive me. If you can't hear me, I'll try to ramp it up.
Brian Minier from South Burlington. I was surprised, but I am also, I am genuinely pleased. John Kalaki was my predecessor, and he served here. And I happen to live about a 5-minute walk from the women's facility, so I think it makes a lot of sense that I'm here. And it's definitely something that he and I have talked a lot about. And honestly, as much as I care about education and education funding, not having that front and center when I come here for a while is probably going to be just fine. So yeah, very pleased to join you guys here.
Thanks.
Yeah.
How many terms have you?
Oh, I'm a sophomore. So
Okay.
I've been here 2 years.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm Joe Luna from St. Albans City. I am a freshman, and technically this is 4th on my list, but it was really 3rd because the first one was a throwaway I wasn't going to get. So it was on my list. I'm involved with a family group of car dealerships in St. Albans, and I manage a bunch of properties. Separately, I'm on the State Historical Preservation Advisory Council, a citizen member, and I'm the president of the St. Albans Museum. And of course, we have a meeting tonight that I have to conduct.
What time is your meeting?
It's at 6.
What cars do you sell?
I got it in Chevrolet.
All right.
And then we have an annex on the Williston Road, where PJ's, we rented the former PJ site by the airport in South Burlington.
Gotta go. Yeah. And Kevin, you have to go too. Are you on the
At 3:38, I believe.
3?
3.
So Kevin, can you just give, it's gonna take a while to get down there.
Sure.
They won't start in time. Can you just, I'm gonna jump to
Yeah.
first. Can you just give us a little background?
Sure.
Where you're from?
I'm totally fresh at this, 25 years in Vermont, and I'm all over with my manufacturing and sales management work before I retired a couple of years ago. And I'm happy to be here. And
And you're in Ludlow, right?
Ludlow, yes, ma'am.
I used to have a store in Ludlow.
All right.
Awesome.
Oh, you're in
All right, let's
Ludlow.
go.
Great.
I'm gonna.
So we're gonna spend some time tomorrow, sometime in committee tomorrow too. So maybe we can get, I wonder if we could get one. Kind of, or staff. I know Ben's gonna stop in too. Maybe Ben could stop in the morning. Ledge Council and see what John Gray can do as well. All right.
Hello, Troy Hedrick. Coming into my 2nd term. I did want to be back in this room. I wanted to be back in this chair specifically because I'm a creature of habit,
It's so we could steer it.
right? And so I can make eye contact with Mary, keep her in line.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely happy to be here. I think we got we got some really good discussions going over the past 2 years, and I'm excited to keep them going. So when I'm not here, I work at the University of Vermont. I work out of the Dean of Students office doing student conduct work. I've been there for a very long time, started there like in 96. Happy to be here, excited to meet you all. Just looking forward to doing some good work.
Oh,
Hi, my name's Will Greer. I'm also getting over a cold like Mary, and I also happen to be from Bennington as well. I'm looking forward to serving on this committee, and we'll do good work. I look forward to learning more about it.
thanks. Sean.
Sean Sweeney, I am excited to be here. I'm almost burst out of my body this morning walking through the door. So I'm just happy to be part of this on any level and excited to be working with you all. I've known Troy. We lived near each other in Burlington 20 years ago. So it's great to be on this committee with him.
Pretty much renovated every square.
And I've renovated his house. So I have when I'm not doing this, I have a design build company in Shelburne. And which is, I've run for about 20 years. And at this point, it doesn't need me like it used to, which is nice. And I'm thrilled. And I'll throw my name in on the clerk if anyone cares. I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but if, you know.
Moved.
I'll second
Mary got
it.
that
I'll
too.
second it.
There you go. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. We'll have a vote soon. You want to vote now? We can vote.
Yeah,
There
might as
is,
well get it out of the way.
Oh, please.
is a
Yeah.
motion for Swan to be our clerk.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah,
Yes,
you
she
just
made
seconded
it.
it.
Seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those
I
opposed?
didn't tell you what the initiation.
Yes, well, I'm ready.
You jump right in.
It's simple.
After work, I said.
It's good.
Taking it down. It's hard to go to the clerk's office.
Yeah, you gotta, well, but we're different because we have a committee bill, which
Oh, yeah,
that's a
yeah,
little
that's true.
different, but there's legalities and technical stuff you gotta learn. So what we do as a committee, we are the only committee in the House, I think also in the legislature, that we are both a money committee and a policy committee. Oh, there goes Wayne. We're kind of, Wayne,
We're all full.
full. Wayne was on this committee, now he's on a,
Even you,
I know, well, you're going to approves.
is that good or bad?
It's good.
For them, it's bad.
You're not gonna be on the floor.
Yeah.
Wayne, I feel less safe. You were always ready for the intruder coming in.
We're gonna be here 5 days a week.
No.
Then somebody called me up, if they need me on the floor to debate, I can come out. right?
Yeah, right. So we are both a money committee and a policy committee. For committees that are in the House, we either are dealing with money issues, which would be appropriations committee, Ways and Means Committee. And Ways and Means deals with revenues and appropriations deals with expenditures. That's basically the way it goes. Very, very high level, very simple. Transportation is also a money committee. They don't really get into much policy per se of transportation. They do to a certain extent, but it's mostly dealing with the transportation fund. Us, we're kind of a different. Our money piece is dealing with bonded dollars. And we put together what is called a capital bill, which deals with, it's in the governor's budget, so we're not going to know what the governor's recommended capital budget is going to be until the governor's the budget address, which is usually around the week of January 23rd. You will be getting updates in terms of how it's structured, starting maybe tomorrow, Friday. I haven't figured that one out yet. In terms of spreadsheets, you're going to be working with spreadsheets a lot. You're going to be working with dollars a lot and projects. And what the capital bill covers, we this year, we also are different in that you're going to hear a lot of the term fiscal year. We deal with fiscal years, not calendar years, fiscal years. And the fiscal years run from July 1st until June 30th. So right now we are in FY fiscal year, FY 25. We're halfway through FY 25. When we get our capital budget, we're going to be dealing with FY 26 and FY 27. We do a 2-year budget, not a 1 year like appropriations does or the transportation committee does. Where Ways and Means basically looks 1 year. We are 2 years. So our budget that we get is going to be a total of around $100 million of new bonded dollars to go to state construction projects. And those state construction projects are pretty mundane, some of them, like the 120 State Street. That's across the street here. That's the AOT.
Mhm.
They're doing a lot of internal HVAC system upgrade, tearing down walls, because there's a lot of mold and sweating and water issues in there. those get kind of boring, but courthouses, we're gonna be dealing with replacing some courthouses or renovating courthouses. We're gonna be dealing also with correctional facilities in this. A lot of our facilities are old. We're in the process of trying to replace the women's facility in South Burlington. That's gonna take a lot of conversation because what's gonna get involved in that is putting money aside to build it. And also the administration's working with the town of Essex to look at land and some issues in that. We're going to be all updated on that. We're also working on replacing what was the old Woodside Juvenile Center for justice involved juveniles. We're working, the department that we work with the most on these projects is Department of Buildings and General Services. We call them BGS, Department of Buildings and General Services. Please do not say Department of Buildings and Grounds, because you will make me, it is not mowing lawns. It is much more involved. It's buildings and general services. And they're going to live in this committee for a lot of this. So they're working on the city of Regents to do a design build situation to replace our Woodside facility. There's no capital dollars that go into that, but we're going to get into the periphery and the high level discussions of that. We also deal with mental health beds. The state hospital, we had to replace the Waterbury complex with the flooding of Irene. We built a new state hospital. That all came out of here. We rebuilt the Waterbury State Office Complex. That came out of here. And we just opened up last year and a half ago, more mental health beds up where the Woodside facility used to be, in Essex. We converted that, tore part of that building down, built a new building. We put on 16 step-down mental health beds there. All of that comes out of our committees. So even though we're dealing with buildings and the bricks and mortar, you've got to know what the policy is so that you know what you need in the building. If you don't know what the policy is, so what's the policy of mental health? What's the policy of dealing with justice involved juveniles? What's the policy of dealing with corrections? If we don't understand some of that, how do you know how to build a building or direct contractors and direct Department of Buildings and General Services and the departments to look at? So we get a high level information on a lot of the policies of the buildings.
So do we also receive input from the constituencies who are going to utilize these buildings ultimately? Or is that information filtered through BGS?
No, we like the courts will have the judge, we'll have the judges in. In terms of corrections and correctional facilities, we're going to have a whole gamut of people here. In terms of dealing with justice involved juveniles, we'll be talking with the courts, we'll be talking with DCF, we'll be talking with Department of Mental Health for that. And there are issues, depending what the issues is, sometimes you do have just constituents come in, but for the most part, it's really dealing with the populations that are going to be housed in those buildings. Like when you get into 120 State Street, which is a state building, we're going to be talking to Department of Buildings and General Services for that because they've already worked through with the departments and agencies that are housed there to know what's needed there. Our capital budget also, there's money that goes to VHCB for housing and conservation. There is money also for the Agency of Natural Resources that goes to the Department of Fish and Wildlife for, trying to remember, for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Some of it's access areas. Some of it is hatcheries. We're going to be dealing with hatcheries. The report came back. We're going to be in the throes of that. In fact, that report, language for that report, requesting that report came from here. We deal with Forests and Parks, Department of Forests and Parks, with all of our state parks and the infrastructure Yeah, we're meeting Scott. Come on in. Come on in. Come on in.
Does that include state historic buildings, or does that go through?
We do talk with the Division of Historic Preservation because we do have money that goes towards our historic sites, which could be Hubbardton Battlefield, could be Calvin Coolidge,
Bennington.
like the Bennington Monument. All of those historic sites will have Laura Trishman being the director of that. We deal with, as I said, our state parks. We also deal with water and sewer projects, monies that go right back to your communities for wastewater systems, for sewer systems, for drinking water systems. And our money matches federal dollars, so we have to be really aware of what's happening on the federal level. In our dollars, it's a 5-to-1 match. So for every dollar we put in, we get $5 from the feds. So we really have to make sure that we're in sync and the feds come through with their commitment because we're working with the towns on their projects. We also, what else am I missing? We deal with the Vets Home, we deal with the Vets Home. Trying to think what else we deal with, everything.
Yeah, I think the psychiatric hospital is gonna be a big thing with the forensic unit too coming up.
Forensic unit, we may get involved in the middle of that. So that's the capital bill piece. And when we're working on the capital bill piece, we're going to be working with Scott Moore. Scott is our joint fiscal office person. He will be living in here. So we have a brand new committee, Scott.
I see. Good to see some familiar faces.
So he works with us on the budgeting, on the capital budget and the spreadsheets and all of that. So we've got joint fiscal office as part of our staff, our fiscal staff. And we also will have our legal staff from Legislative Council, John Gray. Our folks, and he's the one that will do the legislative legal drafting of bills that we put together. So that's the capital bill piece. Are there questions on that? Is it clear as mud?
I'm sure if I can just throw out the record, Scott, more joint fiscal. Whenever I see capital bill on the agenda, I will try to run it here and be here like I just did. That's how the meeting, but if you have questions or new members to the committee, if you're looking for the old spreadsheets from previous years, I'm happy to supply them for you. I'll try to bring some. What you need.
What's your schedule? I've been, so I'm focused on getting the committee started because I'm dealing with holidays and everything. What's your schedule tomorrow? So I was waiting for our schedule in the morning tomorrow. So
I have a meeting 8 to 9, 10 to 11, and I think 2 to 3, something like that. So I have some time in the afternoon.
yeah, we have the inauguration in the
Oh, well,
That's
that's
it.
probably why I have some time.
Could you drop off? Could you, because I could work with the committee too. Could you drop off the spreadsheets?
Sure, would you like the final version or one we had where we had the House and the Senate? You know, how far back do you want me to go?
Let's just do the final version. Let's not get too complicated.
To the weeds. Of course.
And also, I think Phil probably could get a copy of the capital bill that we passed last year and just, you know, the big copies, if we could have that by tomorrow, sometime tomorrow morning.
I'm happy to.
And then I can walk them through the spreadsheet and then at least you can see the bill.
And I'm Phil Holler. I'm happy to come be here and walk through things.
Sounded like 9 o'clock is your best time.
9 o'clock will be the first time, yes.
We're on the floor at 9:30. Do folks want to meet at 9 o'clock tomorrow? That's the
What?
problem. We're on the floor at 9:30.
Otherwise, I'm free again on 11. But by all means, for new members of the committee, don't need me because Chair Emmons. She knows all.
Knows what's what.
I mean, why don't, well, if you could get the spreadsheets ready and Phil at some point could just get the language of the bill, the final bill. And then when we get off the floor tomorrow, the canvassing committee is going to be reporting at some point too. So I don't know when that's going to be because that's a joint session.
They said it, frankly, I didn't listen closely.
They had the resolution for that, didn't they?
I think so.
This is a
Yeah.
joint session.
Yeah.
Came from the Senate. I don't remember. I didn't pay any attention.
Unless the committee has questions for me, I'll run and see if I can get something this afternoon, so you have the first thing to meet us tomorrow morning.
Okay, that will work. I think.
I'll wait before you have questions. I'm sure you'll find it as you go. But nice to meet you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Scott. Are there any questions on the capital bill piece? The bonded amount set by a committee called the Debt Affordability Committee is made up of the state treasurer, the bond bank, different financial folks, and they look, and we'll have the state treasurer in to go over that. It's really boring, but you have to pay attention to it. And they make a recommendation for the bonding amount. We also have, and this started about 3 years ago, we also have some general fund dollars that go into our projects too. So it really gets complicated sometimes to follow the money and balance it out. It really, and then it ends up at the end of the session in conference committee with us and conference committee with appropriations, because our two bills sometimes are really tied together. Joe?
Ultimately, are we advised what the bonded amount will be, or do we advise what the bonded amount will be?
They advise, and we usually stay to that. Some folks want to go above it, and we figure that out. We take the testimony. Some folks may not want to bond the whole amount, but once you start seeing the pressures on the capital bill.
Oh, yeah, and obviously, the cost of borrowing money's increased. But is there some kind of general logic on what the bonded amount is, or is it just an arbitrary number?
No, it's not arbitrary. No, and that's why we'll have the state treasurer,
Really?
because they're looking at capital infrastructure needs. They're looking at debt load per capita. They're looking at what other states are doing and are we keeping up with it? There's a lot of factors that go into it. It's not just willy-nilly pulling a number out of the air.
So I hope that works.
There's a lot of structure to this legislative general assembly. There's a lot of structure to decisions that are made here. They're not just kind of come out and put it on a piece of paper and pass it. In a money committee, we really do deep dives for that. So that's the capital piece. And some folks in committees really do grab on to, like Troy really grabbed on. He really enjoyed working with spreadsheets and some of the projects. And then there were some members of the committee who's like, oh, this is so boring. I can't deal with this. So, it works both ways, but we come together and try to figure it out, help each other. The policy piece of our committee deals with corrections. And that is a total different world, corrections. And we deal somewhat in the capital bill with corrections in terms of building a new facility and even doing maintenance work within our current facilities. We deal with that strictly through the capital bill. In terms of policy of corrections, it is going to be quite a learning curve for everyone. It is very, very complicated. What you experience in your family, what you experience in your community gets all reflected in a correctional facility. It's not just putting a person in a cell and it's done with. You're dealing with healthcare within when folks are incarcerated, because we provide healthcare. You're dealing with MAT, medically assisted treatment, because at least 60%, 70% of the folks coming into an incarcerated setting have substance use disorders with addiction, dealing with tremendous mental health issues. A lot of folks coming into our correctional population have severe mental health issues, cognitive issues. And it's not just folks who are incarcerated. We incarcerate about 1,200 folks. We have about 120 folks who are out of state because we don't have enough room in our facilities. We have about 120 Vermonters who are down in Mississippi. So we deal with that. So corrections has a world of their own language. So we're going to have to spend a lot of time with DOC to know the structure of the department and know the structure of all the layers of supervision for corrections. Joe?
Curious, I have a couple of apartments that I own that I work with Master Lease Pathways,
Mhm.
who
Yeah.
primarily they have a contract with DOC. And I don't know if that conversation comes up, but they're,
Oh, it does.
even with the Northern Housing Coordinator, we talk very regularly because it just makes it work better. But there's some things that are being, I think could be done differently to have more positive outcomes for the people involved.
That would be good to hear, because we do deal with, the bulk of DOC's population is supervised in the community.
I
And
understand.
I think right now, trying to think of the number of folks under DOC supervision, I think it's close to 8,000. It's around 8,000.
Daily numbers there.
Yeah, I think it's, and you need to know the language. You need to know the language of the supervision. There is probation, there's furlough, and there's parole. And all three of those have different structures, and they're ordered by different entities. Probation is under the courts, and the courts decide to put a person on probation. And the court decides if the person's violated those conditions, what happens to the person. It is not DOC, it is not law enforcement. It is the courts. Furlough is when someone has been incarcerated and has met their minimum, and they are a good candidate to be released into the community, but they still need some close supervision, and DOC decides that. So furlough is under DOC. And DOC makes the determination that there's violations of conditions that are set, what happens? Parole is set by the parole board, which is not a part of DOC. It's parole board. And the parole board will determine whether someone is paroled. They will set the conditions to that parole. If there's violations of those conditions, the person goes before the parole board for the parole board to decide what happens. But what gets really confusing, those three, probation, furlough, and parole, are all supervised out in the community by our P&P offices, probation and parole, or our field service offices, which are under the jurisdiction of DOC. So there's a lot of layers there, and we're gonna bring in DOC, testify, just like I call it DOC 101. And if you start learning, you're gonna get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into it. Troy?
4162 total active individuals supervised in BT in Vermont.
That's in the
Not
community.
Communities?
Yeah,
21,
4162. So if you want to add absconders, we're up to 500.
5,000, so that's probation, furlough, and parole, or just furlough? That would be all three.
I think it's all three.
And then you got about 1,200 who are incarcerated, so you have about
Oh, there's more than that. What incarcerated was.
12, 13, are they up to 14?
What do you classify as an absconder? Somebody who's,
There's different, I'll show you
They
here.
ran away. They didn't show
Daily
up.
incarcerated right now as of this morning, that the in supervision was as of the end of November. Current female population 127,
Gone up.
current in-state male population 1190. Male population out of state is 114 for a total
We're
of
at 14.
31.
We're 1,400.
Is that where you got the detainee numbers from?
Yeah,
Detainees.
That would be part of it.
Total
To see the,
female detainee is 54 out of that 114. Total male detained. These are folks who have been charged but have not been sentenced.
Mhm.
And they're in correctional supervision. Male detainee is 408 out of 1190.
so about
And that's
a
pretty
third
good.
of your more than 30, but of that 400, some of them are with federal marshals,
Federal detainees are 85.
up to 400. think that-
No.
No, they're on top of that.
I presume anything in the federal system is not our,
Oh, it is. We have a
in
contract.
the sense we have a contract, but not from a policy perspective, from what the feds decide to do with.
That's not our, but we house them at the St. Albans facility a lot, some at the Chittenden facility, but mostly we contract out with the feds for those beds.
And that
Which goes towards the DOC budget.
Oh, there are funny deals. Like once upon a time, I was on St. Albans City Council and the St. Albans Town facility has its own sewer and water plant, but it's run by St. Albans City. Which kind of makes sense. We have an operator, but they're just little things you wouldn't.
But you're getting a payment for that.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I haven't seen that budget since 2012 because that's not my bag anymore. But there's things that wouldn't be intuitive unless you.
And it's different populations too, because you got the ICE and then you got the federal marshal for the feds. Those are two separate contracts. So
Yeah.
get into that a bit.
So if you get into rounding up some of the migrant population, we're gonna have some issues with that, because they want to house them in our correctional facility.
Gotta plan for that.
I was just gonna ask, like, it sounds like you're saying this already, but you have like little primers, your different entities just like upstairs come in and give us little primers, we start. So like nobody needs to know everything right
Yeah.
this minute. You're gonna learn as we go for the newer people.
Corrections is very complicated. It's really, really complicated. It's not as you perceive it as a citizen in the state, but once you start working in it, it is very, very complicated. And some things that you may think is the right thing to do, once you start taking testimony and once you start hearing from many, many different folks, opinions do change. One way or the other, they do change. So that's our corrections piece. And we try really hard to divvy it up as evenly as we can, but the issue is right now with the capital bill, it's a 2-year budget and we have to get that out this year. It's a 2-year budget. When we come back next year at this time, we do what's called a budget adjustment. We have set the 2-year budget, but in the interim, from May of this year to January of next year, there's going to be some movement, like some projects maybe didn't go forward like we thought it would, or some projects are more expensive. The bid came back higher than we thought. So we can move money around. And that's what the budget adjustment is. And that's what we'll be doing next year. Complicated? Right?
Just want to know we haven't introduced Phil.
No, we haven't introduced Phil.
Hi, Phil.
Phil is,
Important.
yeah,
This room.
Bill is our committee assistant, and there is no way this committee could operate without Phil. And you've been here 6 years.
This is year 6.
And he knows us really well. He knows us really well. And Phil is a great resource to go to. He does our scheduling, helps with our scheduling, contacts the folks. We do have an agenda that we work with Phil every week. We set up the agenda for the next week. And Phil works with contacting the folks that we want to come in. And he sets all that up. And he's our right-hand person. He's the 12th member of the committee. Really is. I'm so glad that you're back, Phil. I'm so glad that you're back. Anyway, so that's my spiel. Questions, thoughts?
I guess a follow-up on the detainees, it sounded like that's a third of the population.
Yeah.
Do you have the lengths on there too? Like a day to a year? Like how long are these folks?
This gets updated every day. I don't have,
Like how long have they been in there, I guess is my question.
right, there, this, I know it's on this page. I don't have it, I don't have a quick,
Right, so it goes anywhere from a couple days to 3 or 4 years.
yeah, some of them are detained longer than their minimum.
Yeah.
That happens.
Because some of it depends when they go to trial. It's all up, it's not in DOC's hands, because DOC has no controls, the
The
courts.
barometer of how backed up the courts.
Yeah, it's the courts, it's your prosecution, and it's your defense. And we'll get into that, because a lot of our work sometimes connects with judiciary.
I've spoken to Martin about a lot of that,
A
yeah.
lot of our work connects with judiciary. So when you start looking at your detainee population, you know, some folks say, well, they shouldn't be there because they have high bail. Well, maybe they have high bail for a reason. You get into what bail really is. Some are held without bail.
Civil confinement, Brian.
Yeah.
And then sometimes for every day that a detainee serves is counted as credit for time served. So if they were there for a year as a detainee and finally could get to court and then were sentenced, and say their minimum was 5 years and their maximum is 10, they've already served a year of that 5. Okay? So, and then on top of that, we have a program called Earn Time. For every month that a person serves, they have up to, is it up to? I can't remember. 7 days calculated off their sentence. And we'll get into that too. So it's like peeling an onion.
Furlough though, isn't it day for day? They go back in?
No, it's the same.
Okay.
Connor?
Yeah, just another issue I think we'll be working on a lot again is the shortage of staff in the correctional facilities and recruitment and retention. It's like any sector, but it's really bad when you're in a 24/7 facility because you get people really burnt out, working double shifts. So you saw probably in the news recently with the administrative sort of leave in state government, you'll see a lot of that in corrections. So it's like you throw incentives, morale gets better, you can track it with the climate surveys. And then after a time, starts dipping back down and being a crisis. So it'll be a big issue again.
Yeah, and I think it would be really helpful for us to really reach out to GovOps committee and do some work, because we're not the ones that deal with classification. With salaries, with retirement benefits, we don't deal with it. It's not our jurisdiction, it's GovOps. And I think it's really time to start expanding this conversation that the union has, the VSEA. To GovOps, because that's where the rubber meets the road. It's not so much here because you can get into that, but you're not really making those policy changes to retirement or the pay scale or certification. We're trying to certify our correctional officers. That kind of blew up. And staffing is a big issue. It's a tough job. It's a big, and it's also a different culture. Each facility has its own culture. And one thing that we can do, sometime in January, maybe the beginning of February, it's always good to take a field trip somewhere. And if people are interested, we could possibly do a correctional facility. That's a little dicey to set up, but we could do that. We could go to some state office buildings. We could go to the state hospital. We could go
No
to.
parking garages this year.
No. Don't ever own a parking garage.
We heard a parking garage.
Parking garage.
Yeah.
108 Cherry, Rutland, Asa Bloomer Building.
Yeah.
Don't ever own a parking garage. If you do, make sure you maintain it, because it crumbles. So I know, Kevin, you missed a lot of this.
Sounds like an important part for me. You were talking about,
We're talking about the capital bill,
yes,
how we do the budget.
Yes.
Tomorrow, we're gonna get the spreadsheets.
yes,
Gonna get the spreadsheet of what we've already put in place. We do a 2-year budget.
Okay.
Not a 1 year.
Yep.
So tomorrow, we're gonna get the spreadsheet, work you through what the spreadsheet is, and we'll get a copy of the bill that became law. That is the language with the spreadsheet. For that, so we do a 2-year capital bill. And it's dealing with state-owned buildings, it's dealing with courthouses, dealing with correctional facilities, VHCB. Deals with a lot of money that goes back to our communities for water and sewer projects, CSO projects. We get into clean water. A lot of our money goes towards cleaning up the Lake Champlain.
Excuse me.
Federal requirements for that. And so there's a lot of layers to that. And then, of course, we deal with corrections, which is a whole different. So any questions?
What's a CSO project?
Combined sewer overflow, which a lot of our communities have their stormwater runoff and their sewage combined in their infrastructure under the roads, their piping. And if you have a heavy rainstorm, your storm drains, putting all that water, and it goes over a certain level that then gets combined with your sewage that then goes into the lakes.
And fun fact, a lot of the sewage treatment systems in place were built during like the Eisenhower administration.
You'll be getting into things you never thought you would talk about.
One of our dams are pretty dodgy too. I'll be very curious to see how the progress was on
Yeah,
those.
the dams, we own, state owns some dams. We have to deal with that. We don't put money to private dams or other dams, state-owned dams. We also have the Waterbury Dam, which is an Army Corps of Engineer dam. But we have to put money on the table to get the federal dollars. So, you know, this is what you may find when you get into the budget world. People may say, well, you spend too much. Why don't you just cut it? Or why are you raising this fee? Well, if you don't have that cash on the table as a state, a lot of that cash is used to match federal dollars. The federal dollars has been allocated to the state, but the state has a responsibility to put some money on the table to get those dollars. If we don't put money on the table, we lose federal dollars, which means we lose money to be able to do projects. And that is so true in the transportation world, because any road that is built in the state, 80% of that is picked up by the feds. The 20% remaining is picked up by the state and the locals. If you don't have enough state dollars to put on the table to draw down those transportation dollars, and you got to do a road project, that's going to put more pressure on the state for money, because you're not going to get your federal.
Maybe like class one and the interstate you're speaking of?
Interstate is 90%. Interstate is 90% federal and 10% state. So if you've got a state highway going through your town, the feds pay 80% of that construction. The state pays 10% of that, and the local community pays 10%. If there's work on Interstate 91 and Interstate 89, because it's an interstate, the feds pay 90% of that cost. The state pays 10. But you still have to match those, you still have to put money on the table to match that federal drawdown.
The state doesn't, or the feds don't pay. I mean, we get a stipend from the state, which might be a federal pass through for like class 2 and 3 roads.
That's for your paving.
Yeah.
That's something separate.
Yeah, but it's not, okay.
That's separate. So that's part of the transportation fund, but that all comes from our fees of driver's license, car registration, gas tax, diesel tax, fees on registering motorboats, fees on snowmobiles. All of that goes into your transportation fund. Doesn't go into the general fund, goes into your transportation fund for transportation projects. Could be roads, bridges, culverts, all of that, rail, all of that. So the transportation fund is really funded a lot through fees. More fees than anything. And a lot of those revenue sources, the fees, are used to draw down federal money. So those monies are allocated to the state. If we don't pony up the money, we're leaving money on the table and not getting our projects done. So that's what we balance as legislators. That's what we balance. And you're going to see that in our own capital bill when you're dealing with water and sewer projects. There's X amount of money that's been allocated to the state for water and sewer projects in our local communities. Our local communities are depending on that federal dollars. But if we don't put the money up from our state coffers on the table, we're not going to draw that down. And the same is true in healthcare for Medicaid. It's the same in Medicaid. There's a federal allocation for Medicaid. If we don't put state dollars to match that, we lose a lot of Medicaid dollars, which means nursing home beds aren't reimbursed. Healthcare isn't being provided to our Vermonters. So there's that little piece in there that we don't understand that as citizens that aren't working with us. But once you start working in the legislative branch and start working with budgets, you start seeing it from a different perspective. Yeah. It's very different than what you see. Are we the only committee working?
Transportation.
Good.
Just getting everyone there fast, they can work.
Oh, thank you for that.
Connor takes care of Connor.
Yeah, let's got to stick together.
I was one guy that doesn't listen.
So it's a learning. It's real learning. You look confused, Kevin. Drinking from a fire hose.
Yes. Yes.
So for new members in the committees, we've got, you're the only one you're not a freshman, Brian. then we have three,
Like there's 3, 4.
four freshmen,
Yes, Adam, 4 was.
and then you from another committee.
Whole nother world.
It's a whole another world for you folks, but particularly for freshmen, don't feel that you need to know everything about everything. You're gonna be overwhelmed. In 3 weeks, you're gonna say, oh my God, I can't keep up with any of this. What is going on?
Just wait till the clean water revolving.
Oh, that will be, we'll do that in the morning. We're not doing that yet.
What's that, Jim?
But
Did
that's,
I miss the
Clean
protocol
water revolving
in this
fund.
school?
okay, I'm going there next.
Ah.
But for new members, do not feel that you need to know everything about everything right now.
We're getting started.
The focus is really your,
This is tomorrow.
your focus is really the committee. And the focus will also be where you sit on the floor of the house and the relationships you make with the people who's sitting around you and what you learn from conversations with them in terms of what's happening in other parts of the building. So don't feel that I gotta read all this stuff. I gotta read all these bills that are being introduced, because bills are gonna start being introduced. Don't worry about it, because every bill that's introduced is changed. Doesn't stay in the form it's introduced, because it goes through a real deliberative process in committees. But focus in on committee work and focus in on where you sit on the floor and those social relationships that you make, because that's how you're gonna know what else is going on in the building. And of course, you members of your caucus too, so you'll learn from that. But I know it's gonna feel overwhelming. And if you do feel that way, reach out to any of us, because we've all been through it. Some of us just recently, and some of us a long time ago. Mary.
Yeah.
So does that make sense? So protocol of the committee. What I tend to do is recognize people more by their first name. I don't get into representative so-and-so. If that would bother anyone,
Quite
basically.
all right.
Hmm?
Quite all right.
Yeah, call me Alice, don't call me. Oh, when you get mad, you can say chair.
Call you by your full name.
Yeah, just don't call me by my middle name. Nobody knows it.
Mission.
Challenge rounds now.
Yeah.
Just issued the challenge.
Yeah, well, at home, my husband calls me Queen Mom. Or he calls me the Queen. If the Queen's happy, the household is in good shape. The King is happy. The Queen's happy, the kingdom's happy. Protocol of the committee, I like to meet on time. Doesn't always mean we will, because sometimes I get pulled out. If I get pulled out, James will run the committee. If James and I are pulled out, Troy will run the committee. He's the ranking. And we always have an agenda every week. And what I like to do is on Wednesdays around 12:30 to set our agenda. And it's the chair and myself and the ranking member, the clerk, if they want to be involved. I don't want to get everybody in the committee. It's usually just that core group.
You missed that. I got elected
I stepped backwards, you got it.
as the clerk.
He's the clerk. He's the clerk.
Don't be bridesmaid, never bride.
Yeah, you don't need to take notes or anything either. So we do scheduling Wednesday afternoon, and Wednesday around 12:30 is when we do the scheduling with Phil. Sometimes when we get in the capital bill, sometimes we need the respective commissioner of of BGS here to kind of help figure out how much time it's going to take or who has to come in, that type of thing. What I like to do, and it never works this way, I like to set up in the morning more capital bill things, in the afternoon more DOC, but it never works out that way because we get a crunch for the capital bill. The reason I like to do the capital bill in the morning is our Senate committee, Senate institutions meets in the afternoon. So they need the same people that we sometimes have. So I like to kind of clear that up so that they can meet. But there's many times in the capital bill, we're dealing with projects that they're not up there, they don't need to deal with just yet, that we can do it in the afternoon. But I kind of like to have a split, but it doesn't always work that way. We will also be getting bills in the committee. So when we get bills in the committee, they'll be up here on the board. And what I do is I make sure that we spend time as a committee to go through the bills. And we do our best to get the bill sponsor in, give them 5-10 minutes to give a brief review of the bill. And if any of you are introducing bills, the same thing will happen to you. You'll be called in to the committee that the bill went to. And give a brief for the sponsor, just to give a brief overview of the bill. And then the committee later on will decide, is that a bill that we want to take up and hear further testimony? And if it is, well, who should we have come in to testify? And then what you may find, we take a day of testimony, and we say, we don't want to do this bill. Or we say, yeah, this is really something important. We're going to have to really work on this. Or, there's a bill coming over from the Senate. We might not be able to meet the deadline to get our bill out. Maybe we could work on this on the Senate bill. So that's kind of the structure of how we'll set up our priorities. But I really like to have the committee make the decision in terms of what bills we'll take up. And sometimes we can combine bills into one topic for that. In terms of decorum, and I'm a real stickler for decorum, both here and on the floor, because I think our decorum has gone down the tubes. Really feel that. We disagree with folks, but it doesn't mean we have to be disrespectful. And in committee, it's where you hear the testimony, you balance all viewpoints, and you're going to hear things that you really don't like, and you're going to hear things you don't agree with, and you're going to hear things that you really agree with.
Mhm.
There are 11 people in the committee, 11 viewpoints, 11 different parts of the state, including Bennington. But everyone comes to the table with different experiences, different perspectives, and different views from your community.
Mhm.
And we work through that. The committee is where you hash out your issues. It's where you have your battles. But sometimes there will be battles. And you hash it out in committee. You do not bring those battles to the floor of the House if it's from your committee. Because the committee is a unit. We're here to work together. We'll disagree, but you know what? We'll find common ground. There's always tweaking that can happen to language, but we can find common ground. And I always have worked to have a strong committee vote on the legislation that we pass. If it looks like there's a real split committee, it ain't coming out of committee until we figure out what we're doing. Because I want a strong piece of legislation that goes to the floor, and I want the committee to be behind that legislation. And sometimes it's easy sledding, sometimes it's real easy, and sometimes it isn't. And I don't know how it's going to play out this year. Just don't know. The other thing too, when you've worked together as a committee, and you come out with a piece of legislation, and say the vote is 10-1, 10 people in support, 1 person opposed, or 9-2, 9 people in support, 2 people. If you voted against the bill, you had your battle in committee. And the protocol and decorum of this building is you don't bring that to the floor of the House and fight your committee on the floor. You had your fight in committee. You don't bring that to the floor and take on your committee. Because you fought that in committee and the committee made a different decision. Doesn't mean you can't talk about it with some of your colleagues, but in debate on the floor, you do not slam your committee.
Nope.
And you do not go against your committee on the floor because you had that opportunity here in committee.
Quite honestly, for new members, most of the bills came out 11-0.
I'm trying to remember a split one, but then.
You're trying to remember
So
why.
if you McGuire ones?
Yeah.
There was one that came out 10-1 because Eric didn't think it went far enough.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
I think it was only once.
So I remember we speak about bills that as they left the committee, if something's gone through like the crossover process and it's become, and it comes back and you can't even recognize it, you're not.
Well, that means when it comes back from the Senate.
Yeah,
Well, that's a whole different world.
okay, that's not what you're speaking.
We're not there.
You're speaking of, yeah, the square comes out of here and whether you agreed with it or not, then if it's a square in the house, you don't talk about it on the House floor.
Because you had your spot.
That makes sense.
You had your decision in here, the committee heard it, got back and forth, the language maybe got adjusted. Maybe there were 4 people opposed to something, or 5 people, or 6 people, who knows? And the language got adjusted and picked up, okay, you pick up a couple people, yeah, I can live with that. So now you're down to 4 people that don't agree with it. What are your issues? What is it? Well, if we tweaked it this way, or we deleted this, does that, yeah, that helps. It's a legislative process. It's give and take. Something else I wanted to say. Oh, when we vote a bill out of committee, there is a member of the committee that will report that bill on the floor. There's a member of the committee that will report that bill on the floor. So number one, pay attention to testimony on things, because you might be asked to report the bill on the floor, or you might be asked to report that section of the capital bill on the floor. So be prepared.
Take lots of notes.
Take lots of notes and listen. Because-
Memorize the phrase, I yield to the chair, if you don't know the answer on the floor.
Weak way out.
But really, it's, the reporter of the bill is there to represent the committee.
Mhm.
Not there to represent yourself, not there to represent that issue. You're there to represent the work of the committee. And the reporter is out there for us, but we don't leave the reporter out there by themselves.
Mhm.
They're reporting a bill on the floor, and all of a sudden they start getting a lot of interrogations. It is up to the remaining members here to get up as well and talk about why we made that decision. You support the reporter of the bill. So if Mary's up reporting, or Connor's up reporting, or Kevin is up reporting, and all of a sudden it looks like the person's really getting in trouble, Troy can get up and speak. Brian can get up and speak. James can get up and speak. We help each other. You don't leave somebody stranded on the floor. That is the worst thing that a committee can do. We work as a committee.
Rarely does that happen because you're well prepared before you go in. And that's the key thing.
So James, I don't know, I've dominated. I know this is new for you, but I don't know.
Yeah,
if
I
you
mean,
have any-
it's interesting how I'm already kind of knew the amount of things you guys deal with that we dealt with upstairs in different ways. So that's kind of, policy side. I have, obviously we have different views on certain things. I mean, I got Teresa to go rep and stuff like that. They did it begrudgingly, but I'll go with first names. You're the boss. But being on time is huge to me. Sometimes you can't just be decent enough to tell us where you're going to be, and I'll do the same. And if you have a question, this is big, because Alice already said this, but like it's happened in, I think, 2 different committees that I'm aware of before, that there were members who basically attacked witnesses.
You don't do
We're not Congress. It's not acceptable there either. Don't ever do it.
You don't do it.
Just listen. The main thing is there's tons of things you don't agree with. I know in human services, there's things that I didn't agree with, but you can't show it. Don't even show it on your face. It's not polite. Like if Gina's saying something I don't agree with, which is probably the most likely, but I can't show on my face.
You might be.
But that's why I chose her. But we all know as adults, but it's easy. I've seen it in many committees where we're humans, and you start like, this is really aggravating, but you can't show it. You have to be respectful to other people and realize that we're all elected members of this body, but there's some people who are more forceful personalities, like myself, and I think pretty much almost everybody in here by the judge. But there are committees where there aren't as forceful committees. So like when they see a negative facial expressions, that visceral reactions that people have to like something, and then they're like, wait, I don't say anything. And nobody in any committee should ever feel like their voice is not welcome. That's like my number one thing. If somebody in the committee feels like their voice isn't welcome, I'm always looking like, why? Like if you just say, Kevin, for example, I just saw you in front of my face. So if I look over and I'm like, he looks like he is like, feels like he wants to say something, but won't. Now I'm gonna ask you, why, you know, like you might be saying something like, I don't really feel comfortable with the content. I don't know enough about it yet. Cool. Okay. That's cool. But, or you might say, well, Connor keeps talking all the time and I don't know if I'm allowed to because he's been here for a while, you know, just, you know, and that happens. But I've got good reports from this committee. So and Alice has got a reputation. So I know that probably doesn't happen here, but it does happen.
Yeah,
And
watch out
it's-
for your reputation.
Yeah. Well, listen,
Yeah.
I'm right here.
Your reputation means something in this field.
Yeah, well, it is a huge thing, and hit on something that's really important to me too, is that those relationships that you have with other people. There are people who've been here 4, 5, 6 years or even longer who barely know anybody else. There's not too many of them, but there's others of us that go out of our way to make sure you learn, you talk to people that are progressives and independents and Republicans and Democrats. And most of us, I think it's most of us, put those labels aside because they're really garbage. They don't mean anything to me, at least. And you just start to know the people, because those relationships are what matters. And, you know, maybe Troy and I agree on one issue or disagree on something. There's people who might be very petty and be like, well, whatever, and they never work together or whatever. But there might be the next topic we really agree on and we need each other for. So like, and most people are really good about this, but every once in a while you see somebody who's got that little wall. And so just be careful of that. And, you know, just remember, we're all here for the same reason. We all want to help. We have different ways of helping, and don't let it bother you to the point where, you know, I always think about this is our policies matter, but think of somebody that maybe in your family has stage 4 cancer, or maybe they got in a car accident and died, or, you know, we just had in our family just had a 1.84 pound baby that was emergency C-section the other day. My point is not to the details, is there's a lot of things that are far more important in life than whether or not you agree with Joe on an issue. I'm trying to get everybody's names in here on this, but anyway, it's not there, but like there's just bigger things in life. Like this, we do important things, but don't let it control how you feel about other people. So, okay. That's all
And
I
I
have.
think we've also tried to keep an open ear in our committee. And one thing, your committee is your home base. It's your home base. And when you come in the morning, have your coat in the coat room, wherever you're gonna hang up, but a lot of people just come back into their committee room, their home base. You know, you keep your briefcase here. You're gonna have file cabinets. We'll get into that, that type of thing. Sure. No.
I thought there was a pause there.
Well, there kind of is, because I want to say our normal day is, at this point, we're going to start out pretty slow. But once we get into it, probably third week in January, we get the Capitol bill, we'll probably start meeting at 8:30 in the morning. And I don't know how many commuters we have. Troy, you're a commuter.
Yeah.
Brian, you're a
Half
commuter.
the time at least, yeah.
Early
Half the time at least, yes.
Half the time.
Both hand.
I'm a commuter, but you just tell me what time. We'll be here.
So we try to work in that.
Over to You're driving like a normal, not great.
So we meet, you know, we're gonna meet after the floor at this point, but once we get the budget and stuff, we'll start meeting at 8:30. We take a break, like at 10. We'll take a 15-minute break or something. We try, and then we work until 12. And then we take an hour lunch, and then we're back here at 1. We're on the floor at 3. Once we get into the system, back here from 1 to 3, the floor isn't gonna be long, like half an hour at the most. We come back for another hour. We work till about 4:30 is what we do. Fridays, Tuesdays are tough, because when you come in on Tuesday, we're on the floor at 10. And we go to caucuses, and I don't know how we're gonna run the caucuses, because we're limited in space right now. I don't know if they're gonna run at the same time, or one's gonna run one time and the other one's gonna be after that. I'm not sure. So we usually don't meet until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesdays. Fridays, I work with a committee to figure out what you want to do. I don't want to be here late on Fridays. We've got 2 Bennington people. It's a haul to get home. It's a haul for me to get home. The rest of you don't live that
An
far.
hour and a half away.
Yeah, Ludlow, you're another hour and a half.
That's fair.
Yeah, I've been, I know that road well. So I like to have the committee finish at least by 2:00.
Sorry.
2:00.
2:00.
At least some committees go to 4. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna do that. The other thing that maybe we could do on Fridays when we work in the afternoon is take like a quick half-hour lunch, but do it maybe 11:30 to 12.
Mhm.
Depending what's going on from 12 to
Beat the Russian cafeteria.
beat the rush in the cafeteria. And then work from 1 to 12 to 1:30 or something.
Can you eat here or do you
Yes.
just, you want, you
But
can?
you can eat in the cafeteria, you eat
Okay.
here. Sometimes I end up eating here while I'm running the committee.
I was just gonna kind of tag on to springboard up with some of what James was talking about. I can recall very specific instances where I came in hot on a topic and
In this committee or
Yeah.
just on the floor?
especially with corrections early, I don't know if you remember, but I was fired up and I had gone 180 degrees on a topic. So my advice, I guess, take it or leave it, is to be willing to do that, right? To be moved by and changed by and influenced by testimony, by our conversation. I have most certainly gone 180 degrees on a few topics.
And I've seen that. On the other end, I can imagine where you were when you came in.
Yeah.
Kind of went to the middle, and I've seen Butch Shaw was one. He was way over here, he said. Came around.
I don't know if I've gone to the middle.
No, but you come around, and I've seen it from both ends. I've seen it from both ends, and once you start hearing the testimony, it's like, oh, I hadn't thought of it.
Yeah.
Opposite ends of that plays out that way.
I love coming in here and voting to change on the floor. Those are my pride, those are my celebrated moments.
I joke that that's yours.
I know you have.
You never come over on my side.
No, we have, I can't remember what they were. For different reasons. Budget was a big one, for different reasons.
Those are the ones.
Oh, yeah.
So also my signal for the committee has started to work. I closed the door. Doors closed, the committee's meeting. Yeah. Sometimes there may be 3 or 4 of us in here working on something and the door has to be closed and we're not meeting, but for the most part, if we're gonna meet at 8:30, 9:00 in the morning, and say we're meeting at 9:00 in the morning, you come in at 5 minutes after 9, the door's closed, we're meeting. We're scheduled to meet. If it's after the floor and you're not sure if we're meeting or not, you should be, because we try to be pretty clear about that. You see the door closed, we're meeting. That's my trigger. And sometimes we're waiting for a quorum. We can't meet unless we have a quorum. Quorum is 6 people. We can't meet. And if we're due, we've got people sitting here waiting to testify, and we don't have a quorum, door is closed.
I assume you do. Like upstairs, we had our email, our text message list.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's something to work with Phil. If folks could submit to Phil your contact information, please. Name, your address, because the address is helpful to have. It'll be distributed with committee members. Your phone number, home, cell, whatever you use, your email, and if it's your cell, indicate that you,
We write it on.
yeah, and your email. It's really helpful for committee members to have.
Bill, do you still have ours?
Especially today,
Okay.
for the new people, like at least upstairs, and I
Yeah,
assume
same
if
here.
if it's in the middle of the day and there might be like, all of a sudden you get a message from us that says, hey, committee's starting, or, there's a change of plans.
Yep.
Upstairs, we did it for birthdays and stuff, which is whatever as long as like you have a way in the middle of the day, you might be somewhere else and all of a sudden there's
All of
a
a
change.
sudden, we had to meet
Yeah.
real quick on something.
So-
You gotta get it out. Like today, we couldn't find Brian. Where's Brian?
Talking, same as always.
It's Brian. So Ryan, do you have any questions? Because you've been on another committee in the House. Do you have, I mean, you have some perspective in terms of how committees operate. Is there anything that,
Oh, I mean, I gotta figure this one out,
Yeah.
right? So, ultimately, I think I'll have questions just because I still got half a brain lobe stuck in education about, that's gonna be looking for a revenue source. They're gonna be bonding to try to do, I'm curious where this money is gonna overlap with that money. At all. Okay, yeah. Maybe Fabo. That's
we
what-
did
Yeah,
school construction in here
yeah,
way back,
yeah,
and it was this committee that put in the moratorium.
yeah.
And I was on the summer study, the work group, and we don't have the bonding capacity to take care of the needs out there. That's the issue.
Yeah.
The issue is you can set up a school construction program like we had before, or tinker with it and do something on top of that, or do something completely different. You gotta find a funding source. You got, what is it, $300 million worth of construction out there?
There's a $6 billion backlog, so 300 times 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there's no way that we have the capacity and bonding.
right.
For that. So that.
Apples and oranges, forget about it.
Yeah, that's a real work in progress for that. Because nobody has wanted to tackle, people don't want to take it out of the ed fund.
Yeah,
People don't want to, need to bond for it to help our communities. And then they don't want a dedicated revenue stream because they don't want to raise taxes.
I guess this is unrelated to the previous one. The other one is, I live right down the street, like I said, from the women's facility. I've got some folks in my neighborhood who are all about, free her, about, yeah, I know. It's gonna take a while to build a new facility. I'm in favor of building a new facility. Folks want to see something improved for the population now. I don't know to what degree that falls to us and to what degree that falls to the folks
Falls to
there. Yeah. And so that's a bigger conversation for another time, but that's been on my mind a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, you'll figure that out as you hear testimony. And you're gonna learn a lot in 6 weeks about corrections.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just there recently and I was at Lund talking about the, kids apart and all that
Yep,
stuff.
and
So,
that came out of here,
yep.
do that, so.
Yep.
Into that, for sure. Well,
Like, did you want personal or legislative email? I'm assuming.
the email you're gonna be using, sometimes people put their personal, yeah, whatever works for folks. The thing that's really important is when we're not in session during the summer and you've put down your lead Gmail, make sure you check your Gmails off session because a lot of people don't. And there are things that pop up off session that I have to connect with committee members.
I need to get back in, or not back, in that hat. I have 3 emails to check in. James and I are both in Franklin County and we do stuff and always. I'm better than some who never do it, but I need to do it at least daily.
You've got to, now that you're here, people live on email.
I concur.
Text. And then the way when the committee runs, person comes in, they testify, they sit between Brian and Joe. They'll sit there, that's the testimony,
Do we kind of rotate or do we actually? Yeah, all right.
I just kind of hover over them.
Yeah, loom.
Remember, we're always on YouTube.
Yeah.
So it's being put out there all over the place. And the way I run the committee, I introduce the person testifies, and then I open it up for questions. And I would like you folks to raise your hand. If you have a question, just raise your hand, and then I'll call on you. And I call in terms of when I see the hands raised. Like if Connor raises his hand first and then Will raises next, I'll go Connor and then Will. So I try to go with that. I don't think there's anything else. We are on YouTube. This is something you'll have to work with Phil to figure out. I think you just got it, then it takes care of it or something. You'll have to work with Phil. Don't touch anything.
Right now, no.
Got it.
So tomorrow we'll just see how it goes. We're on the floor at 9:30. So I would say we come here morning after when's the canvas committee? Are you all done? The canvassing committee? Do you know when you make your report to the joint session? You didn't,
It's tomorrow during the.
yeah, is it morning?
It's usually during the session.
I couldn't find an agenda.
Yeah,
It doesn't
it's
look like
during
it.
the before.
We have a draft agenda sent to,
I'm
I'm not
Yeah.
sure if there's one sent to let you know. That'd be strange though.
We'll have to see,
Exactly.
Hey.
we'll see how it plays out tomorrow.
In some ways, but-
We're still on YouTube, folks.
Yeah.
That's where you have to be careful. We're still on YouTube and be careful on conversations they have on the side because they're out there. Pay attention tomorrow when we're on the floor, if the committee has to meet or there's an adjustment. James sits on one side of the well and I sit on the other. And we're kind of spread out, I think, in terms of where people are, I think more people are sitting on your side. Yeah.
I mean, you know, I am kind of great.
That's it. I'm immediately in front of James, pretty
So
much.
just keep your eyes always out sometimes, like tomorrow morning to see, and if you see this from me, it means we're meeting.
So we're gonna start out on the floor.
Yeah, 9:30.
And if I see that, I'm following you.
Yeah.
That doesn't
What's your seat number? You're in front.
15, but I don't have a plaque.
You're all right. Yeah, I
Where
think
where
most
are
of
you sitting? I didn't see.
Right
you're
next
across the
Almost directly
well.
across.
Oh.
Yeah, almost directly across from you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So, you know, I'd like to meet sometime tomorrow. I'm just not sure when.
Yeah, the joint canvassing committee is at 10 tomorrow. And then there's a break until 2 once they're done.
Okay, so maybe after the joint it's a joint session, so probably by 11 o'clock, we'll be done.
Oh, well, I think we have to canvass and vote.
Yeah.
On Roger Sucker.
Oh,
Well, it's gonna be work, on John Rogers and stuff, but
Yeah.
that's not gonna take, we'd
No,
be
not
done by
take too
11.
long. Yeah.
We'd be done by
yeah,
11.
that'll be super.
So let's come in here, like 10 minutes after you get off. You know, do a bathroom break and get coffee, bring a coffee in here, whatever. Come in the morning, if you get here at 8:30, 9 o'clock, this is your home. This is gonna be your base. And people hang out in the morning. That's how you kind of get to know each other. You know, go out to the cafeteria, mingle.
It's okay to leave things
Yep,
here overnight.
this is your home. And then,
It's safe.
Back and forth.
It's safe.
Probably not computers or any, probably not computers or personal.
Right.
But you and you'll get it.
I can't speak for down here, but I've always left my iPad and stuff. It's upstairs, it was all safe, but I don't know about down here. Little different.
Yeah, downstairs I've done that too.
and you've got a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's-
Michelle's. You want to another committee, so we'll work with Michelle and see if she wants to see it. Yeah,
I think most of that's already
Sit down with her.
yeah.
I don't know if she was saying.
She didn't need that.
Up here, you have this file here in the front, and also there's filing cabinets here, and then there's drawers underneath.
Also a garbage.
So there's drawers. underneath.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're
they're
gonna
fine.
Drawers underneath there?
A couple.
Yeah, this is where.
No, but underneath the bench, yeah.
Oh,
Drawers underneath the bench.
Do we have to designate?
That's all Wayne stuff.
Figure it out.
You're still on.
You get the
So
smallest one.
so we're gonna go off YouTube.
That's my luck.
We're on YouTube.